Hello, I'm Kyle. This is Give Pause Hobby, the channel where I stop to appreciate the things I love to fill my free time with. And today, that is Horizons of Spirit Island, specifically on the So What's All This About series. Which I'm reclaiming and restarting. It used to be kind of my short form, just giving a general idea of a board game. The intent kind of to send people to say, hey, for game night, would you like to do this? And that's sort of the space that my reviews have taken now on Favorite Shelf. So I'm reclaiming it to just be a general talking about a game platform. I know that none of that matters, but there you go, now you know. All right, so getting into the SWATA for Horizons of Spirit Island, we're gonna start with the objective things, the things that just exist. And I'll save the subjective stuff for later on. So Horizons of Spirit Island, first of all, what is it? This is the newest release from Greater Than Games for the Spirit Island series. And this is at least for right now, I don't know if it's forever, but a Target exclusive. And I say current release because there is going to be a forthcoming Kickstarter of somehow even more spirits. I don't know where these keep coming from, but I appreciate the level of imagination because it is genuinely dumbfounding. So Horizons of Spirit Island is a standalone package with 5 spirits, a big old fold-out board instead of individual islands, and it also has a bunch of tokens instead of the plastic pieces. Each of the spirits has its own little deck of 4 unique cards, and then the minor and major powers are duplicates from the regular Spirit Island game, as far as I can tell. I haven't gone one-to-one just to double check them all, but many of them sure seem like ones I've seen before. So I'm just assuming that they are not, those are not new, those are kind of being recycled. Now, given the fact that this is a little bit of a hat tip to the Fantasy Flight model of having your rule book, but then also your starter rule book, this is definitely aimed at onboarding newer players to Spirit Island. That's kind of further supported by the fact that these 5 spirits are on the lower complexity side. And we'll get into who they are and what I think about them a little bit, because this is, I'm recording this on the 6th day of having this game, and as of yesterday, I finished playing with each of the 5 spirits because I just kept wanting to play more. But yeah, so that is Spirit Island, Horizons Spirit Island. What you won't find in here, there's also the Fear cards, the Invader cards, some Blight tokens, the stuff you need to play Spirit Island. But what you won't find are any of the event cards. You won't find any of the, there are tokens for lots of things in here, but you won't find the old tokens like the Beast tokens or the Spiral Vines, or any of the element tokens that they were coming out with in later expansions to help you keep track of stuff. It's a pretty, now, when I say bare bones package, I do not mean content light. This box is pretty full of stuff. It's really impressive what they're able to get into a $30 package. Yeah, so with that, speaking of the new stuff, let's talk about the spirits. So these spirits are a nice combination of damage dealing, kind of defense putting upping, and utility sort of stuff. On the back, I've noticed that they no longer have the complexity rating for any of these. I don't know if that was intentional because they all, to my eyes, they all look a little bit on the lower complexity side, and maybe they just don't want people to open up this box and realize there's a rating for which they're only given one option. This is definitely, at least to me, seems like a great move because these spirits are all immediately understandable, what they do, how to play them well. The game also has those progression cards where you can kind of lay out which cards you should get with that spirit for those who are really new to the game and don't want to have to just pick up the 4 cards and make a decision. I think for most people who are veterans of Spirit Island, that's part of the fun, because sometimes you have combinations that just like should not exist. You know, a really damaged light spirit suddenly getting access to, you know, some like huge lightning bolt or whatever. And I think that's part of the fun, but for new players, it could be overwhelming. So there are those as well. Now, as for the like summaries of what the spirits do, they have those too. So I'm just gonna go through and talk about them just a little bit. So for the fathomless mud of the swamp, our messy otter boy, the big kind of takeaway from this spirit is that at any point where they have their sacred sites 2 or more influence, then build actions create explorers instead of towns or cities, which is enormous. I know that it doesn't say on the back that Fathomless Mud is high defense, but that ability in and of itself is super high defense, if you ask me. And the innate power kind of helps move that those influence pieces around. So it is really like creeping mud, and it's pretty neat. Rising Heat of Stone and Sand is like this interesting kind of mirage salamander thing over desert, is one of the 2 damage dealers in Horizons. And what's interesting is they both have the like flip side of a coin in terms of damage dealing of the other one. On this side, Blistering Heat says all your sacred sites, invaders have -1 health to a minimum of 1. So, you know, your towns would become just 1 health like explorers, and your cities would go down to 2 health, which is huge because 2 is really kind of like a break point. Powers that deal 3 or more damage are immediately super valuable because, you know, knocking off a city from the map is it's 2 fear, and it's also at fear level 3. That's all you need to do. Just get rid of the cities. So the fact that they can go down to 2 is pretty enormous. What's interesting is their innate power only does damage to explorers. It's supposed to give the effect of like, what is it called? Scorch with waves of heat. So, you know, make the people, you know, parched until they're dead. Devouring Teeth lurk underfoot is, like I said, well, this is the other damage dealer, and this has the flip side to Rising Heat. Instead of Rising Heat taking a health away from anyone at their sacred sites, all of Devouring Teeth's damage abilities deal 1 extra damage and power. So that includes innate, that includes cards. So everything is just more damagey that Devouring Teeth uses. Now, in terms of presence, like your growth options, Devouring Teeth is a pretty slow-moving spirit. So you kind of have to be a little bit more strategic of how you eventually get to places. Well, actually, it's not the slowest in terms of moving. I should say the powers, its unique power cards, are a lot of 0 range, so it needs to be in the spot where it's dealing damage. So it moves roughly equivalent speed-wise as the other ones, but you need to be there. You can't throw teeth out to chomp on someone else. You got to chomp them yourself. Sunbright Whirlwind is the Sun Cat, and is all about, has control as its like towering, you know, best thing it does, and then utility is its second place, which tracks because it's all about moving things around. It's about moving explorers and towns, moving Dahan, but also helping other spirits to extend their range. So their special rule is anytime you add a presence during growth, push up to 1 explorer or 1 Dahan from that land, which is huge. Just that's something you get to do all the time. Well, every time you put down a growth, you know, option, that is. Which means that's just happening in the background, and then you have abilities that do more of that. So it's very you can be very thinky in terms of where you want things to be, and you can do a lot of defense, obviously, by just shunting explorers into an area where they're not going to build, and you can prevent areas from getting too threatening. And last but not least, Eyes Watch from the Trees is kind of a goofy looking one here. It's just a bunch of eyes, and the card even asks, it doesn't really know if this is like one spirit, if it's a collection of spirits. It's just like these like goofy eyes peeking out, which is fun. And some of the cards are not so like ha 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 ha. It's just, you know, people disappearing in the woods, so you know there's that. But the main thrust of this spirit is that the Dahan trust Eyes Watching, because they see all these different things going on. So anytime that your spirit adds defense to a region, you can gather up to 1 Dahan into that land. So they feel safer where this spirit is actually doing its, you know, its good deeds. So it's really, really high on its Dahan moving, its Dahan what is that? Manipulation. There you go. And the other part is, it is pretty like, I don't know what they're actually called. I just call it, energy. I was gonna say currency. It's kind of energy light in terms of how much it can produce. So, but a lot of its like unique cards are 0 or 1 cost. So you have to be willing to kind of be playing like the bargain bin of the cheapest abilities you can, because at least for the good part of the game, you're not going to have a bunch of energy to throw around. But those are the 5 spirits. So with that, those are the objective things. And there were some times when I just wanted to say what I thought about a spirit, but I didn't, because that was the objective part. But now we're in the subjective part. I don't know if that face wipe actually worked. We'll find out in post. So first of all, solo works great. The box says it's only 1 to 3 players. And the 2 sides of the board are 2 and 3 players. The rulebook says if you want to play solo, like single island, single spirit solo, more on that later, you can just choose a side and put, I think it suggested putting fear markers down on all the regions of the island that you're not using, which I kind of did stuff like that. Then I did one game where I was like just putting a bunch of my energy tokens over the part of the map. Then I kind of settled on actually putting the spirit board on the map and covering up part of the map that I can't actually use. And, you know, pros and cons to each of them. But the moral of the story is, originally when I was like, I really like playing single island, single spirit solo, but there's only 2 and 3 player sides of the board. It's not a big deal. You just choose one and go with it. There are no events or those like the beast and all those sort of tokens. And I really got into Branch and Claw very quickly. I think I only had 3 games of the base game before I managed to snag a copy of Branch and Claw. So I've almost exclusively played with events and the tokens. And I gotta say, I really do miss having those around. This is back to the Spirit Island that some people think of as the quintessential Spirit Island. It's very, you can math it out, because aside from that one flip of where they're going to explore, you know exactly what the explorers are going to do that next turn. There's no surprises in that. It's just the cards you have versus the actions they're going to take. The only real surprises are the powers you draw from the deck to choose from, and then where they explore. So there is some elegance in that simplicity. I do miss the events because they just add, and the fear cards, I guess, do add a little bit of question marks too. So I do miss having those events and tokens and stuff. So what I'm going to do to kind of offset that is I'm going to put the scenarios, at least the ones I think would work well, on the boards that are provided, and then all of the adversaries. I'm going to copy those and put them into my kit, because then I have the ability to play on a higher level. The rule book does say if you want, well, first of all, it says if you want a challenge, you can absolutely use these things, which I am going to make copies of and keep in the box. More on that and as to why in a second. But it does say that you can just use those level 2 explore cards and put a town in any space where there isn't one already, which is fine. It does ramp up the difficulty. The first time I played, I just went straight, as the game plays, and it was a bit of a bloodbath. And it just, I think it just worked out. And because there wasn't any of that escalation in the second phase of the game, and there weren't any event cards that actually like harmed me or threw a wrench in the works like some of them do, I was able to just sort of wipe the table with the explorers, which did feel pretty cool. But I think I want to have something that's a little bit more thematically engaging than just saying they get an extra town. But in terms of simplicity, it works pretty well. All right, I'm getting in this subjective area. I have organized it so it's kind of least potential for outrage to most potential. And so we're moving up here, and we're going to do our spirit ranking. So of the 5 spirits that are in this box, from last to first place, I got to start with Devouring Teeth. I do generally like having the spirits that are high damage. That can be a lot of fun. I just didn't and I do like the fact that it is a little bit of a puzzle. There is a lot of damage output, but you have to get there to use it. It's kind of slow moving and all that, but I don't know. It just didn't quite speak to me. Fourth place is our Muddy Otter Boy, Fathomless Mud. I really liked the power of the sacred sites. You only make people instead of the actual buildings. That was really cool. However, the rest of it I wasn't as interested in. And one of the parts, probably the highlight of this one, where it has a little bit of Dahan manipulation, was just kind of outdone later on. So we'll get to that in a little bit. So after that, I'm going to say Rising Heat of Stone and Sand. So originally I did have this like 5/4 with the other damage dealer, but I did like this one a little bit more just because it was an interesting, the puzzle of I can do some damage, but specifically to explorers. It was a little bit of limiting in terms of where I can put my influence, and I'll come back to that point later. It was just kind of a little bit different kind of fun compared to Devouring Teeth. I just liked this damage puzzle a little better. So silver medal goes to Sunbright Whirlwind, the Sun Cat, and this was a lot. I do love spirits. I love the river spirit. I'm bad at remembering the names, but I really like the river spirit. I like any spirit that allows me to pick stuff up and move it, and play around with what's on the board, as opposed to just like damaging it or removing it. So I had a lot of fun with this one. I think if this was in a game with other people, other spirits, I think it's really, it provides some excitement. I did play this with solo 2-spirit, and the fact that it can extend the range of abilities was super helpful, and a lot of fun. So it's a great one to plug in. I don't know how this would do true solo. I have not played with that just yet, but as a utility spirit to go along with a more consistent damage dealer, it was a lot of fun. Which leaves the gold medal to the Googly Eyes. Eyes watch from the trees. And this really wasn't even close. This was, I did enjoy, even like the 4th, 5th place spirits, I enjoyed all these spirits, but this one was a different level unto itself, because I mentioned before, one that has a little bit more Dahan manipulation. It was this one. And it's funny because there are only a couple powers. Oh, I guess there are actually a couple powers that move, like specifically move the Dahan. But the fact that any time I defend, which could be multiple times a turn, and I built the spirit in that game with what powers I got to be able to use this multiple times a turn, I can pull a Dahan into the area I use defend. So there were I think for the first time, I've never done this before, I was using defend on areas where ravaging wasn't happening. Specifically just so I could pull a Dahan and kind of prep it to move to another area, because I could move it multiple regions. It just depended on, could I defend that many times? And I thought it was super interesting, at least in the beginning. I was really energy poor. Like most spirits have one of their growth options, like the Sunbright Whirlwind, add a presence and 4 energy, or Devouring Teeth, add a presence and 3 energy. This one doesn't. It has the only presence it gains from its growth are just 1 each, and its track is a little bit slow, so its energy growth is really like flattened, which meant I was hunting through the minor powers deck for those 0 and 1 cost cards and just cobbling those together with multiple plays and seeing what I could do. It was a blast. I had a ton of fun with Eyes Watch from the trees. So that said, as much as I enjoyed the spirits here, they are going to stay in this box. These 5 spirits are going to just be in this kit, because this is going to be my portable / teaching Spirit Island. So this was, it made games a lot faster. I just had less to set up. The board's right there. I don't have to worry about the beast tokens and all that. I don't have to worry about the event deck, which again adds complexity in a good way. So I do miss it, but I'm excited that having the adversaries and scenarios in the box will give me those options. So, I mean, a lot of the games, 4 of the 5 games that I played were before work. I was able to sneak a game in, and that was because the games were just faster, easier to set up, tear down, and just played quicker. So this isn't just going to become just my teaching game of Spirit Island, but it is going to be distinct. Originally, I completely intended on just like absorbing this into Big Spirit Island and maybe leaving the board around in case there were times when I just didn't want to set everything up. And I think once I've seen the spirits, I think I'm going the totally opposite direction. I'm going to keep it on its own, because it doesn't even have the blighted and healthy island cards. It's purely just you start with a certain amount of blight on the board, and if you ever run out, boom, game over, you lost. So it's really pared down in its complexity for some of those other like gamery parts of Spirit Island, which makes it perfect for teaching. Again, makes the game just a little bit faster. You don't have as much setup, as much to think about, but you still get that hook of why Spirit Island is fantastic. And so these 5 spirits, we'll see when I get, because I'm not going to get the forthcoming Kickstarter, I might like not cull, but like move some of the spirits I already have into this box. Some of the ones that typically I don't choose to play with. I don't want to just say any of the low complexity spirits are going to go in here, because I do like playing the original Spirit Island spirits. And even if I'm playing a non-teaching game, sometimes other people want to play those too. Also, the original, like the OG 4 spirits, they have their aspect cards. And these don't, and that was kind of a bummer. That would be I think it was a little bit of a miss that with just 1 card each for each spirits, to be able to add another innate ability. And of course that could come later on, but it just seemed like one way that this could have been like sort of like streamlined, teacher friendly, but also plays to the people who have played a ton of Spirit Island, because you can make your spirit a little bit more complex, but is what it is. So it's going to stay in here. However, and this is, again, we're in the part of the subjective area where I could hurt some feelings. I do not care for these tokens. Kind of at all. And at first, I let me just say, I fully understand why they would do this. I'm sure, knowing nothing on the back end of game production, I'm sure that it's cheaper to produce these than to have a bunch of plastic bits in the box. And I would imagine it's also more environmentally friendly, which is something that I do care about, probably not as much as I should. That said, now that I've played Spirit Island with the plastic bits, there's a reason why those were in there, I think. I know that there are people who like these more because they are stackable, I guess. I don't know. To me, they took up way too much space. These blight ones are like as big as the fear tokens, and as opposed to like the tiny gray blight tokens. And the Dahan things are like, I mean, they're like nickel sized for those in America. And as opposed to like the cute little mushrooms. So I just felt like everything was embiggened on there. And they do have the ×3 things for the explorers, but it just, to me, got really busy on the board. And luckily, I think it was in Jagged Earth, they provided more of all those things. And I had bags, kind of like this, of tokens that I don't really use because I don't typically play this at more than 3 players, and 3 is pretty rare for me even still. It's really just a mainly solo game, sometimes 2-player and rarely 3-player. I've never played 4, and I probably never will because to me I feel like that would get pretty hairy pretty quickly. So I had extras of everything. All 3 of the explorer types, the blight and the Dahan, that were just sitting in bags because I have all of my Spirit Island in the main box aside from the boards, which are in Branch and Claw. And so they were just sitting there doing nothing. So now these are going to sit there and do nothing because I have replaced these with them. I'm sure I've shown you pictures at this point. And that's my... again, I'm sure there's some people who are just like, yes, I agree, and other people who are like, you are wrong, and that's fine. That's why this is in the subjective part. Speaking of which, when I heard about the thin player boards, like the thin spirit boards, when I was speaking with Jack and the Cardboard Herald all about Spirit Island, link down below where we did that, I was really excited because the regular boards take up a decent amount of space. My Branch and Claw box is entirely filled, and that's with all the expansions and the promo spirits so far. So when the new Kickstarter comes out, if I have the big boards, I will have to revamp how I store it. However, I will do that thing because I personally do not care for these thin boards. They work perfectly fine, but there's just enough planing that goes on the table. I thought this was going to be a slam dunk for me because it would be just less to cart around, but I was wrong apparently. So there's that. And last thing, this has kind of nothing to do with Horizons of Spirit Island, but I'm finally going to come out to say it's been a cause of a little bit of questioning, like, am I really a Spirit Island gamer? Because typically, like, the vast majority of my games have been 1 island, 1 spirit. And I know that interacting with the spirits is a hallmark of the game. And when I played multiplayer, there are those really cool moments where you're able to assist someone else, or someone's able to like bump, set, spike with their set of actions. Like each spirit is good at one thing, and you put them all together, and we are a team. That said, I played solo 2-spirit, a game of that for the first time in like forever. I did not care for it, and it gave me a lot of options. There was a lot of avenues to success or failure that I could choose. I just didn't care for, and I feel like I'm decent at multitasking. I'm a middle school band director. I'm typically having no fewer than 3 thoughts at once in my head in rehearsal. But when I was playing that game, I the whole time just kind of felt a little bit like work. And the other games did not. So actually, I played 3 games, 4 games, not 5, because one of them was 2 of the spirits at once. And I gotta say, the Sunbright Whirlwind was super fun, being able to add its abilities to other spirits, which are not inherently fast. I was able to make Devouring Teeth a lot more mobile than I otherwise would have, and that was super cool. That wouldn't happen if I was just playing Sunbright or just playing Devouring Teeth. However, the like processing cost that it came at was just a little bit too high. And there are people who play at 3 and somehow, I don't know if people are really doing it or just kind of like pretend flexing. They say they play 4 spirit solo, Spirit Island. But to me, I think I'm going to keep going with 1 spirit, 1 island, because it just seems like that is the puzzle to me. And this is the deepest part of the subjective pool here. But to me, when I'm playing Spirit Island solo, the fact that I am only 1 spirit, that I can't rely on someone else's strengths, I'm just relying on me, that is part of the puzzle. It's not a bug, it's a feature. So when I go into the powers deck, I'm like, okay, I sometimes want things that are in my wheelhouse. If I'm a defender, I want an even bigger defend thing so I can capitalize on it. Other times I'm like, no, I need to do a Hail Mary and try to find a damaging ability for Rampant Green or whatever. Like, I need something that's outside of my scope, like by a long shot, because otherwise I'm just not going to be able to fulfill this need. And that to me is part of Spirit Island. So having 2 spirits not only lessened that because I was able to lean on the 2 spirits, like, what they're good at, but again, just like the amount of questions was kind of high. But that is what it is. I still had a ton of fun with it, and I foresee myself playing a bunch of Spirit Island as well as Horizons in the future. So again, thanks for taking a pause with Give Pause. It's got a little bit long on the back end, but hopefully you enjoyed it. If you have Horizons Spirit Island, sound off down below. Are you going to put this in your big box? Are you keeping it separate? What's your favorite spirit? And how wrong am I about anything I said, but specifically the thin boards and the single island, single spirit? Let me know, and I will see you next time.